anything that can move the needle on conversion. And I see that as so connected at the hip with SEO as well these days.
And to be honest with you, I absolutely love the term.
For the last 2 years, I've been an independent advisor to companies like Hims, Dropbox, Reddit, Snapchat.
Hi, so today's episode, I'm joined with Kevin Indig. Pleased to meet you, Kevin. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I am fantastic. How are you?
Yeah, very good, mate. Very good. For any of the viewers who don't know who you are, who's been hiding under a rock and they don't know who you are in the SEO community, can you just give a little bit of a brief kind of background with who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure thing. So for the last 2 years, I've been an independent advisor to companies like Hims, Dropbox, Reddit, Snapchat, those types of companies. I can talk a bit more about how I help these companies, but it's a big focus on SEO, CRO, product-led growth, those types of things. Before I went out on my own, I ran SEO and a bunch of other things at Shopify, before then at G2, before then at Atlassian. So, 10 years in-house. Before then did about 5 years agency. Now I'm back on my own again. So that's what I do. And then apart from that, I'm writing this newsletter called The Growth Memo. Comes out once a week. It's free, where I share my kind of insights and analysis of different topics around search.
That's awesome. So obviously you mentioned quite a few small clients there that you're dealing with. What type of work is it that you're doing? Is it mainly SEO, or is it literally all round like CMO type role of doing full marketing suite of everything?
Yeah, it has a very strong footing in SEO, but it ventures into other areas as well. I don't do any paid channels. Advertising is not my jam. But it quickly goes into product decisions. It quickly goes into conversion optimization, and all these things are very connected. But yeah, it's typically that kind of scope. And then in terms of what I do, I often help companies in very undefined or with undefined problems. So, I often look at it this way, where a freelancer might do the actual work, right? They come in, they write, 50 pages of blog articles or 50 blog articles. Then you have a consultant, and they might help research the keywords of these blog articles, maybe create the content briefs. And then as an advisor, I come in and I'm like, okay, should we invest in content? What are our strongest growth levers? Should we hire or outsource? Is the team set up, in an optimal way? It's these kind of more tricky, broader questions that I work with, and typically work with leadership of the company. So it's like a very specific focus that just naturally came up as I kind of progressed in my career over the years.
Yeah, so within that, you're talking about like conversion rate optimization. Is that to do with design, or is it to do with the actual copy as well?
Yeah, both. Anything that can move the needle on conversion, and I see that as so connected at the hip with SEO as well these days. James, you know this so well, where it's so important how users, like what they do on the page itself, and if you can improve the design or add design elements or improve the copy, then that is also impactful in terms of SEO. So yeah, I'll sit down with designers, I'll sit down with copywriters, and we'll think about, how can we change some things. This obviously looks very different based on what type of client it is. So I worked with Nextdoor, for example, a big social network here in the US. And they are, they have millions of pages in Google's index. And so any design change you make there obviously scales so much more. And then another company, say like Dropbox, right? If we work on some blog articles, there it's a bit kind of, if we create custom header images, for example, it's a different type of scale that we're talking about. So it always depends a little bit on the type of client inside as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I've seen quite a lot of this stuff out there of what you're doing. You call yourself an organic growth advisor. For anyone that doesn't know what that is, can you just explain a little bit more of exactly what that type of role entails?
Sure thing. Yeah. It really builds on what we talked about before. It's the type of advisor work, I think, is a bit more undefined and a bit more open problem focused. And then organic growth really came from this awareness that I had of, so many factors playing into SEO, like, again, the look and feel, the type of product, the brand awareness. And I didn't want to limit myself to just working on hard SEO problems. I wanted to open the door to say, okay, I want to talk to leadership about what we can do to get more brand awareness so that we improve authority a little bit, right? And drive more brand combination searches. And so I chose organic growth as, not to reinvent the wheel, but as a different term other than SEO, because I found it so limiting. I started with that at Shopify. At Shopify, I led a so-called mission that I called organic growth. And a mission is nothing else but a group of people from different crafts. So it's it's a group of engineers, designers, writers, SEOs, data scientists, and we all went after the same goal, which is to increase revenue from organic traffic. And I called that organic growth because our spend was so much more than just the blog or some lead gen tools, right? We also created some features for the actual product, like some referral loops and other things. And so it just came up as a term that kind of opened or broadened the horizon of what you actually do to drive organic traffic.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I absolutely love the term. And the reason why I like the term so much is because for small businesses, it doesn't really matter too much because a lot of the staff might be in the existing office. So you can literally call upon the PPC team or a technical kind of developer to speak to the SEO and the content writer. But obviously, as you know, as businesses start to become bigger and bigger and bigger, the technical team and the development team could be out, let's say, in India, where the content team might be in South Africa. And then there becomes a massive kind of gap from one division speaking to the next division. And it's crazy how the paid ads department aren't speaking to the SEO department with regards to you talking about there, with regards to conversion rate optimization, either of the copy, but also you touched upon behavioral signals there, and I'm presuming there's certain things to do with dwell times and stuff like that, and how many pages visited, and that kind of forms in the bracket then of engagement, which is helping the SEO as well. So it's clever because so many people are limiting themselves by calling themselves an SEO, so to speak, when you can bridge the gaps between the technical team, the development team, the paid ads team, and stuff like that. So anyway, moving on to you mentioned the growth memo, the newsletter that you have that comes out every week, and it's free to a lot of different subscribers. I think last time I seen there was over 13,000 subscribers. What's the actual number at now? Is it at 13,000 subscribers?
13,500, yeah. Just crossed the 500 line today.
Superb, mate, superb. So what's in there? For anyone that's not yet signed up, I strongly recommend for anyone to subscribe to this newsletter. But can you kind of sell it a little bit of why someone should be subscribing and getting this weekly newsletter?
Thank you, James. Appreciate that. Yeah, sure thing. First of all, I think it provides profound insights into topics that are top of mind in SEO, right? So I spent a lot of time, for example, diving into AI overviews and provided some firsthand data, not just from third-party trackers, but also some search codes and insights. So I often try to answer the questions that are top of mind for SEOs right now. For example, what's the impact of AI overviews? How do you optimize for them? How do you leverage them? And what's the impact on traffic? And so I think it's very data-based, and I try to be also very critical and then also intellectually honest about it, So the good thing is I don't have anything to sell, the newsletter, it's a means to an end. Now there is a paid version of it as well. But my goal is to just really share back some of the insights that I got, especially when I started out, right? I'm sure you have some an origin story as well, James, but for me, I benefited so much from people being very open and kind of sharing so much of their insights with me, and I'm trying to give that back with the newsletter. So yeah, it's the insights, it's the data, it's a kind of objectivity, and it comes out every week. It's been coming out every week for the last 5 years, so you can expect some consistency. I'm slowly starting to add more community features as well as I'm hitting kind of a significant amount of subscribers. So I'm trying to bring people together a bit more and have them share the insights as well. But there's a bit more to come there.
That's great. For anyone that doesn't know, obviously there was a $15 a month kind of premium package. Is that still going? And what extra do people get if they went with the premium?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm monitoring a large data set of keywords across the web on a regular basis, and I'm distilling those insights into a premium research newsletter. It comes out twice a month. I'm just starting a monthly live session as well, where I'll distill some of the insights. I'll do Q&A, and I'll engage more with, like on a live session, actually, on a live meeting. But yeah, these two kind of additional newsletters are deep dives into sometimes companies where I will do an outside-in analysis. For example, I did, Nike, LendingTree, Angie. I'm working on the New York Times right now. So I'll kind of assess what these sites do well from the outside. And I'll speak to leaders and experts in SEO working at the companies, and they give me additional scoops or insights or validate some of my observations. And then the other part is just industry research. So I recently published the first industry research report about the travel industry, where you get the full scoop on what keywords matter, what are new and trending keywords, which players dominate, which are up and coming, what are they doing well, how are they designing their landing pages, like all that kind of stuff. So that if you work in the travel industry, or say you're an agency that has clients in the travel industry, you should get a lot of extra value in terms of insights that you can then use for yourself.
On the live stream where there's like a Q&A, is that being done on Zoom, or like what kind of platform is that being done on?
Yeah, I'm using Google Meet actually. For a couple of various reasons, but I'm essentially it's kind of split into a part where I present the kind of latest insights, like a summary of all the content that are published. Then I'm sharing some of the things that I observed lately in and outside of search that are important for people to know. Then there's a 30-minute Q&A session, and then sometimes I'll send people home with some more curated content, like some stuff that I came across that I think is worth people's time.
Yeah, no, that's great. What's your thoughts at present? Actually, there's a massive divide, it seems. It feels like there seems to be, if ever there was a recession in the SEO industry, I feel like at present there's quite a lot of people on a lull at the moment. Now, I always have the opinion that obviously in a recession, there's more millionaires made in a recession. So actually, it's now a time where you can actually double down and crack on with doing things. But what's your thoughts on the current kind of SEO landscape at present?
It's such a great question, James, because I was asked the same question on another podcast, and I called it a midlife crisis. I think SEO is in a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
And midlife crises often happen when you realize that you have changed or the world around you has changed. You're just not, there's this kind of disconnect between what you thought the world looked like and what it actually looked like. And so I think this is really happening in SEO for various reasons. On the one hand, lots of SEO, in-house SEOs got laid off, and they kind of deal with that. We had this like very long time of economic boom, right? And since COVID, we're obviously facing the opposite. So that's new for a lot of people who have maybe been in the game for less than 10 years, which sounds crazy to say. And then we also have a lot of massive changes on Google itself, right? They roll out all these updates. A lot of them are very intransparent. There's, I don't think the guidance from Google is great on a lot of these things, like helpful content update. I don't think I need to say more. I think all your listeners know what I'm talking about. Then we had this lawsuit against Google where we found out some of the kind of ranking factors or signals or systems that they're using, which are in paradox to what Google spokespeople have been saying for a long time. We had the ranking factor leak. Then we have the rise of AI and machine learning, and it's all these kind of things together that just changed the game tremendously. And it's a bit difficult to find your footing. But James, I do agree with you that I think this is actually the time where you want to double down on, right? As you said, in recessions, that's typically where some of the most successful startups are being built, right? For various reasons. Don't need to go too deep into that. But I think also from an SEO perspective, there's a time of a lot of opportunity because you can use a lot of the AI tools in your favor. And if there's one thing that people should take away from this podcast, it's probably that I think people underestimate greatly what crazy stuff we can do with AI tools these days and how much more that's actually going to change the work that we're doing manually today.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your thoughts? I'm going to move on to AI in a second, actually. It's good that you've kind of mentioned it, but What's your thoughts then on like affiliates specifically? Because obviously it seems to be that e-commerce type sites have seemed to do well. Like, have you looked into this a little bit more of why is it you think, is it like the amount of outbound clicks? Is it the behavioral signals, the engagement? Like, what's your thoughts on why so many affiliate sites, some I would say that have got very good content on there. There's some there that deserve, in my opinion, to be hit. But I think there's some in there that have got great content and they've kind of also been thrown under the bus with some of these kind of spam type websites. What's your thoughts on that at present?
Man, it's rough in affiliate. It's really, and you know this better than me, I think, because I don't have any affiliate sites anymore. I used to do a little bit there. But I had a pretty good insight into the industry when I worked at Shopify because I was very close to the manager who worked with our affiliates. And I saw also what they earned. So there still is a lot of money to be made in the affiliate. But the one thing that I saw change over the pandemic already, and I think it's part due to Google updates and part not due to Google updates, but it's that the kind of white label affiliates it performed worse and worse, whereas influencers, creators, and people who put themselves front and center, they gained more and more in affiliate fees. And so I think it's really tough to be a white labeled affiliate site these days, which means you don't have a strong recognizable brand. You might not even know who's behind the site or who's behind that business, and you see the opposite working really well. So I'm giving you an example. There's a site called Garage Gym Reviews, and the guy, I don't remember his last name, first name is Cooper. He has a really strong YouTube channel. I actually think this the business started as a YouTube channel and then branched into the website as well. Check out the website's trajectory. It gains during every update, continuously organic traffic. And I think part of the reason is just that you know who's behind it. There's a certain trust aspect. The traffic sources are diversified. The content is really good. It obviously fulfills all the kind of like requirements from a Google perspective, right? So it is optimized. But most importantly, you know who's behind it and you can consume that content in various formats. And I think that's kind of the winning business model for affiliates these days. And that obviously takes a lot of time and attention. And so I think it's much harder these days to have 10 different affiliate projects going on. I think my assessment of the situation is you rather want to have like one strong project, you're kind of front and center, or you have a person who's front and center, and it's much more personable.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there brilliantly, because something that we do, I do quite a lot of investments into digital assets, and exactly what you've just kind of explained is the type of business or brand that I'm looking to buy. I'm actually looking to buy brands and websites that where the website's not that strong from an SEO standpoint, but they've got massive followings on Pinterest, on Twitter, on Instagram, on TikTok, or whether it's on YouTube. And then what I'm doing then is I'm taking all that content and I'm putting it an SEO in it and optimizing it and putting it online and putting it onto Google. I'm not trying to get those ones that are perfectly optimized for Google, but then got no brand behind it anywhere else. And I think that's your major play at present, is trying to get those places where they're not strong on Google, but they're strong in other places. And then you can then integrate it within Google, because that traffic diversification, like I've always been a big believer of engagement and behavioral signals. I think it's one of the biggest, most under-talked kind of SEO strategies that people don't seem to do. Everyone seems to become obsessed with content and links. And then kind of the new buzzword is topical authority, but then they're not talking about dwell time, how many pages have kind of been visited, where the traffic's coming from. Have they got an email list, a newsletter? Have they got a big following where the minute you go and create a new post, you're going to get 2,000-3,000 eyes on that post just from your social media, and Google's seeing all of those clicks and stuff like that, and instantly then you're jumping in top 3, top 5 results with no backlinks and with very few internal links. Now, obviously, with more internal links and more backlinks, hopefully you can then jump it to the number 1 spot. But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there for sure. But next question, Reddit or user-generated websites. Do you think that they're seeing too many wins at present? Like, what's your thoughts on that at present?
It's a very interesting question. I've been struggling with that as well. So since the Hidden Gems update, and I think it was May of last year, May of 2023, you see all sorts of forums gaining massive traction simply because they're forums, right? So obviously Reddit, Quora, front and center because those are the biggest ones, but you'll also see forums from Shopify or Zapier or some consumer brands actually gain lots of traction. And so you're right, it does seem that Google has a bigger appetite for user-generated content. Forums seem to be the format that Google can recognize for UGC the most. Is it better or not? There are lots of reports of where it's probably a worse answer or not a good answer at all. But when I look at people around me who are not SEOs, they actually often value an answer from a forum, especially Reddit, very much. And there's a specific type for this, or a specific user intent, better said, where UGC answers matter most. And it's usually when people want an opinion from a non-expert. So a good example is fashion, right? You want to buy a sneaker and you research maybe some brands, but you're not satisfied with the information that vendors have on their product landing pages. And that's when you just want somebody who most likely is a human, right? Reddit is not perfect, right? But in the grand scheme of things, it's most likely you get an answer from another human, and you want an opinion about how does the sneaker fit? Like, how did you actually like it? And part of the problem is that so much of the web has become commercialized, right? We're talking about affiliates. They obviously have an incentive to sell. Then you have Amazon and some of the other bigger retail platforms, and there you find mostly good reviews, but also some fake reviews. And it comes down to a trust problem. It comes down to people actually wanting an answer from another human that is not incentivized in any way with money. Maybe karma on Reddit is an incentive, if you will, but it's not a monetary incentive. It's more about like honor and glory, if you will. So that's why I'm struggling with that question. I can see why people want Reddit answers. I also know how quote unquote easy it is to game Reddit, so I know about the dangers here. But I also wonder what other options Google really has here, right? They're dealing with this big AI wave from one side, and AI content is getting really good these days for specific topics. And then on the other hand, again, you have this highly commercialized web, which Google doesn't like hate, right? Google benefits from that as well, but they need to somehow balance commercialize and incentivize answers with something quote unquote real. And I think that's how we ended up here in this place. I don't think this is going to go away. I much rather think that Google is going to get much smarter about where to place Reddit answers or discussions and forums on the SERP, so higher or lower, and then which threads to show on these platforms, as well as they make more deals to get direct access to the APIs of these platforms.
That's a really interesting answer, to be honest with you. And the question that I've asked there completely splits opinions in the SEO industry. And your answer you give is almost the exact same answer as what I normally give as well. And the reason why I try to explain it to affiliates that sometimes get annoyed with my answer is that if I was Google, and bear in mind, majority of keywords seem to be, as people started to become more and more frustrated with the search engine results, seem to start asking the question and appending Reddit at the end of it, which I also think was a big reason of why Google then started to realize, hold on a minute, so many people are searching for keyword with Reddit. Maybe we should be promoting Reddit that little bit higher. But not only that, I think that SEOs actually killed the results page in a negative way. And the reason why I actually think that is because everyone became obsessed with correlation of content. So then Google, when they started to write, here's the top 10 trainers, if someone went and clicked on that number one result and didn't like that result and went back to the search engine results page and clicked on the number two result, the number two result was very similar to the number one result, and they didn't like the number one result. So then they go back and click on the number three result, and next minute before you know it, Google's now got a problem that their user of their platform and their search engine is not happy with the results that Google are now giving. And therefore, maybe a forum which has lots and lots of different opinions and people can argue with each other, as opposed to one person's opinion, which generally speaking, would sort by who pays the most commission via an affiliate commission, that's not really giving the best answer. And a lot of affiliates don't like me answering it in this way, but I actually think they've done a good job in parts. Now, there is obviously information bias out there, and a lot of SEOs and affiliates might not like the answer that obviously we've both just given, but I'm sure with information bias, they'll show me certain results that say, what, so you think that this is the best answer? No, I'm saying there's certain questions and answers that are not good enough. But realistically, like you called yourself an organic growth advisor, if I was an organic growth advisor for an affiliate, I would be saying, go and get your answers on Reddit, go and get your answers on Quora, go and participate what's ranking, and get the traffic back to your website if they want a more detailed review. Why are you not doing that anyway? Go and hang about in Facebook groups that people might be asking questions in there. That's just marketing. Stop pigeonholing yourself in just being an SEO and actually start being a better marketer. And when you become a better marketer, you become a better SEO indirectly anyway.
Yeah, so, James, you're so right. Sorry but you get me fired up about this, because the thing here is that you have a chance to actually interact with your target audience, right? So you want to go after a keyword, you see discussion forums is ranking high, there's a Reddit thread that hits right into the target keyword, right? It's super relevant. You go on there, and so I think as SEOs, we quickly think okay, what answer to the question would be super helpful, or how can I gain some attention with my answer? Cool. So you spend some time writing that answer, you post on Reddit. Now, why wouldn't you take that answer and distill it into your main content as well, right? Like the jump that we have to make as SEOs, where we get too obsessed about numbers like search volume or some of the other metrics you look at, where we're not marketers enough, to your point, is cool. I've just figured out how to get this relevant answer. Why wouldn't that be relevant in my landing page or blog article as well, right? So again, it's this kind of like problem that we're a bit overfed with numbers and SEO, specifically search volume, and we just get obsessed about that stuff, and we forget that there's an opportunity with discussion forums to actually engage with potential customers or clients or affiliate visitors.
So moving on to artificial intelligence then, Kevin, what are you doing with regards to AI? Are you leveraging AI? Are you trying your best to get any of your clients or anything that you're doing to be using AI and using it to super boost what you're doing?
I leverage AI a lot, actually, and it's interesting to see that more and more clients are asking for AI-generated content, or how can we leverage AI? A lot of times because their boards pressure them to do something cool with AI. So there's a bit of hype in here as well, but I actually think there's a lot more foundation than most people think. Just to mention a couple of examples, I've built AI-generated programmatic SEO content for some clients. And I think there's a sloppy way that usually goes wrong, and I think there's a good way to do it. Can talk a bit more about what good means. I'm also using AI a lot in my data analysis or just kind of exploration. So one of my favorite tools these days is the GPT-4 Sheets and Docs Google integration, where you can bring open AI models like GPT-4.0 to your Google Sheets, and then do all sorts of crazy stuff, extract entities, similarity scores between, keywords, URLs, all sorts of fun things, or just custom prompts, which is incredibly helpful. So I'm using that a ton. I think one of the most basic workflows is that I just go to ChatGPT and ask it to create regex formulas for me, or Google Sheets formulas that would take me a long time, but allow me to get more out of Google Sheets. And then there's this whole world that I'm spending a lot of time in right now of AI workflows where, for example, you can build a sequence where you punch in a keyword, then the tool will then scrape the search results. You can then filter out certain results, like say discussions and forums, then send the machine back to scrape that content, and then use LLMs to do something with the content. So, we spoke about, or I actually spoke with a client about this earlier this morning, but things like FAQs or article summaries, you can create that in literally minutes right now, at a pretty high fidelity where humans are actually less and less involved to get a good product.
So with regards to some of them, it was quite interesting that you said that you've now started to get certain clients kind of asking for AI. I presume the powers that be are saying, look, we need to start integrating this within some of our kind of workflows and stuff like that. So are many of them doing it for, let's say, so if you're going scraping like the search engine results and the people also ask, are you managing to pull them in to kind of help assist create like content outlines for what people should be writing about?
Outlines, even whole articles. Now, I'm mostly hesitant to create full articles with AI. The reason is simply because the longer the output, typically the more the quality decreases of AI output. That's a bit query dependent or a bit dependent on the article. So evergreen topics or very clearly defined topics, say glossaries, for example, typically produce really good AI output. So if you just need to define a term and talk a little bit about what this is and why it's important, blah, blah, AI can do that really well these days. When it comes to something where human opinion or experience is more important, that's where AI typically fails. But I think people underestimate how good some of the AI output actually is. And then, of course, this whole world of programmatic SEO. And again, the two factors can significantly increase the quality of your AI output for programmatic SEO. One of them is to split up the prompts. So most people will attempt to have a single prompt for a whole piece of content. What I actually do is I split it into 10 different prompts or 20 different prompts for different paragraphs, right? So you're writing about, I don't know, payroll in California. Cool. Now, one prompt could be about what are the specific rules for the state of California when it comes to payroll. Another prompt would be explain, the different components of payroll. Another prompt could be, how have the payroll laws changed over time, right? So you literally want to split it up into smaller segments. And the second thing is you want to ground your prompts and your output as much in data as possible. So for some clients, for example, we'll get data from the product, we'll get data from surveys, we'll get public data sets, and we'll use that to ground the output, meaning to guide the output. So for example, you can literally do this in Google Sheets where you load the data and then use that integration that I mentioned earlier to then reference every data point and say, here, take this data point, put into context with this other data point, create 2 to 3 sentences around this and explain it. And those type of things work really, really well, as opposed to write an article about payroll in California.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're using AI quite a lot internally for content creation as well. We are humanizing it. So these areas where, like you said, we're trying to add our experience on top of them getting a base layer of an article being done. But a lot of our prompts are at paragraph level. So each and every question has certain prompts put in place. Then we'll try and humanize it, and then we'll try to kind of just double check like data and check that there's no hallucinations that's in there to make certain factually that it's correct. But yeah, I mean, it's helped us a lot. It's helped us. Nearly all of our writers now become editors or prompt engineers. And the output, I think it was like, last time we checked, I think it was 8.4 times more content that the content writer now was able to do now from being a content writer to being an editor. And do you know what? If I'm being 100% honest, I actually think the content is so much better. I think it's more concise. I think we're moving all the like contextless words and the fluff that was in there. I think that it's more to the point. It's more factual. It's more entity rich. And for me, as a reader, I'm thinking this is a lot better. I think it's better for the users. I think it's actually the cost of information retrieval for Google. I think for that, it's actually better as well. So I think all round, for anyone that turns around saying that you shouldn't be leveraging AI, they're probably not just using the right prompts, in my opinion, but it's unbelievable. And we're using it for like league segmentation as well and stuff like that. So it was interesting that I've never heard that of what you said, that certain customers now or certain big companies are now trying to say, how do we leverage artificial intelligence? I always thought there'd be a bit of more of a negative stigma for a while of it's replacing humans and we shouldn't be using AI and they're dead set against it. So it was quite interesting that you said that part.
Yeah, look, there's a moral conflict here as well. I do actually believe that humans can still add a lot of value to content, but I also concur that, we need to be a lot more specific about where and when that value add happens. Now, when you look at the landscape, right, a lot of big companies are becoming more interested in AI. On the one hand, just to make sure they're not missing out on something big that competitors might use. But also on the other hand, because they have to become more cost efficient, right? These layoffs that we mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, they're obviously a symptom for the somewhat difficult landscape that a lot of companies have to navigate these days. And so as a manager, you're looking for efficiencies. And you, of course, if the question is, can we maybe pay a couple $100 for some AI tools a month to replace maybe 3 full-time writers, then morally, you don't want to make that choice, but you also have a responsibility to the business. And that's where this choice needs to be made. And I'm not saying you should always replace the writers, but I'm saying that's how a lot of managers and decision makers think these days. And a lot of times, or more and more, the AI wins, or at least a compromise wins, where they say, okay, maybe we let 2 out of 3 people go, we keep 1, and that person then manages the AI content. And again, there's a lot of nuance here. There are cases where it doesn't work, or we shouldn't maybe use it. I'm not writing my newsletter with AI either, right? That's still all me. And so there are legit cases where you want a human to create the content, but that's not every case.
Yeah, for sure. The personal branding, you've got an amazing knowledge panel. You've got a great kind of brand online for you personally. Do you think that other SEOs or other marketers should strive to have like a knowledge panel or build a personal brand? Like, what's your thoughts on that?
The knowledge panel certainly helps, but it's, at the end of the day, the question is, what is it good for? And so it looks good, it looks professional, but it doesn't mean that all of a sudden more people, subscribe to my newsletter. I think personal branding is a double-edged sword, and it really depends on what your goal is. And obviously there are different degrees of personal branding as well. I think like putting yourself out there just a little bit can generally help, but there also is that line at which it might take away from your responsibilities as, an in-house SEO or from your business. So you always have to weigh the trade-offs against the benefits. And so I think there's a right time to do it. I probably wouldn't spend too much time on personal branding when you just start out. But once you have maybe 5 or 10 years of experience and you have something to say, it might really help you. But again, it so much depends on what you're after. My journey, it kind of fell into place by accident. I am a voracious note taker. And so I started my newsletter because people asked me to share my notes from some of the conferences I went to or from some of the blog articles I read. And so it started very organically. And then, at some point I had 1,000 subscribers and I kind of woke up and I was like, oh, okay, interesting. Let me kind of keep going. And then I went through many iterations and kind of ways to go about the newsletter. And then I really doubled down once I left the in-house world and I didn't have to feel guilty anymore about spending so much time with the newsletter. But long story short, I think personal branding can help. I think there is a degree at which it might distract you from other things. And at the end of the day, the question is, why do it and what do it for?
Yeah, so I mean, on that there, on your knowledge panel, it says international speaker. So obviously you travel the world doing quite a lot of talks at certain SEO conferences or business conferences. Do you find that brings you in more business? Do you find that that's good for your personal branding? Like, what's the reason for you doing it? Or is it literally just to try to give back some value to the community? Or is it a mixture of everything?
Yeah, it's funny because, even with all the activity that I do on LinkedIn and the newsletter and speaking, 50% of my clients come from word of mouth. They come from recommendations. Some of them are people I used to work with, which is honestly, it's so fulfilling personally when people can hire you after you work with them. But 50% is completely independent of all the stuff that I do. 25% is through the newsletter. 25% is through LinkedIn. And so, it's not nothing, but it's not as much as people think. I do the personal speaking for a couple of reasons. One of them is because I enjoy it. I have a good time. Two, I like to connect with people in person, and speaking at a conference is just it kind of lowers the cost of flying, especially to far distant conferences. But I'm working remotely, so for me, conferences are a great way to kind of get my fill of connecting with people in person. And the third is I want to grow newsletter subscribers, and I was expecting a bit more. It doesn't help as much as I thought. But for me, it actually drives very, very little business, almost none. And at the same time, I think it's actually a feature rather than a bug, because it allows me to give kind of a completely unbiased talk, and I don't have to sell myself in a specific way.
Yeah, that's good. So I'm now just moving on to a few questions from the community. So I posted on LinkedIn and on Twitter and a couple of private groups to some questions to ask you. Now, some of these questions can throw you off a little bit, because you're like, oh, I've not been asked this one before. But I want you to name one thing that, all right, your close friends might know, but the SEO community or people don't know about you personally.
Yeah, what's one thing that people might not know about me? And obviously, there are many things, but I want to see if there's something interesting. I think one thing that could be interesting is I've actually been a club DJ for many years. So I started when I had kind of my kind of peak DJ time when I was in college, and I think it's interesting because it goes back a little bit to my nature. I can quickly obsess over things, and so once I put my mind to something, I can get really good at it. And I also really think it helped me with speaking, because I've stood in front of thousands of people and made them move, and that takes away a lot of the fear of just being in front of people. James, I literally had moments where I would be in front of, and I was spinning vinyl, so I was not playing CDs. I was playing actual records. And the fun thing about records is when you take the needle off the turntable off the record, the music will stop. And sometimes you're so lost in your thing that you take the needle off of the wrong turntable, and then the music stops. And then a lot of people will turn around and look at you like, what the hell is going on? And so I had a couple of these like super embarrassing moments where I completely fudged it up. And I think that took a lot of fear away from speaking and just got me comfortable being in front of people. Now, I'm still nervous being in front of people, but I think that was just a big enabler. So I'll go with that.
I never knew that, so that's a great one. What was your DJ name? Do you have any specific name?
Yeah, it's DJ BTB. And there's a famous DJ also called B2B. So good luck finding my old stuff, which is probably a benefit. But I still have, thousands of vinyl records in my mom's basement. I have a bunch of mixtapes on my Dropbox. I think even some recordings, so some of my gigs. And it was such a fun time. I was a very different person back then. I was wearing baggy pants and way too big T-shirts. Hip hop had a big impact on me, and I don't think people would recognize me these days. So it was literally a different person, but it was a really good time, and I caught just the tailwind of the times where people went to the club because they wanted to hear new songs from the DJ and not the songs that they already listened to on their iPod or on Spotify at home. So such a fun time, man, and it's a completely different game these days.
That's class. That's really good. So moving on to the next one. Name one thing that you feel that most SEOs, I'd go as far as say most advanced SEOs, seem to still get wrong. So something that they obsess over too much, or something that they don't do that you feel people should be learning more about.
It's 100% business cases. I think one of the things that really helped me along my career is that I always, I'm always probably a bit much, but that I learned how to formulate an SEO problem into something that the business should actually care about. Turn an SEO problem into dollars. And so this is what holds most SEOs back in my mind. They obsess over, detailed technical stuff. They nerd out on things, and they completely forget why somebody with the director title or VP title or C-suite should actually care about that type of stuff. So being able to translate, I think, and making a good business case, I think is the number one thing holding SEOs back. And I'm speaking mostly about the in-house and kind of agency world, obviously.
So on that, would you say more like prioritization, they're spending too much time in the wrong areas? Is that kind of where you'd say?
Part of it's prioritization, and the other part is just to figure out a path to the money. So if we fix these canonicals, what would the actual impact be in terms of revenue, right? And that often prioritizes things very naturally because you want to go after the biggest buckets of money. But just having a logical rationale of how that translates it then to money. For example, so let's say our canonicals are broken on our product landing pages. Cool. We have 100 product landing pages. This is the combined traffic that they're driving. This is what we estimate we could achieve in an improvement in terms of organic rank. Now, if we get that much more or that much better rank, what would that mean in terms of traffic incremental, and how could that translate to revenue based on average order value and conversion rate, right? This kind of simple formula, maybe it's not that simple, but this type of breaking things down to the money, that's what a lot of SEOs miss. And that's what actually gets you funding and attention from decision makers.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we always talk about in the office about a return on investment. What return on investment is this work going to get us? So we always talk about the 3 Ps, one of them being prioritization, one of them being, are you just being a perfectionist and overthinking a certain area? And then the third one is procrastination. Are you overthinking something? Just stop the 3 Ps, sit down, work out what's the fastest route to getting you the best return on investment. And I always drill into them about the 3 Ps, and I think it's so important for them to work with. But moving on to the next one here, Google engineer, right? You can sit down with a Google engineer and you can ask them one question and they're going to be 100% honest with you about the way the algorithms work. What would you ask them and why?
I love that question. It's really challenging. I would love to understand how they leverage search demand or search volume to rank sites. So something that I have been observing over the years and that I think has a stronger and stronger impact is that at a certain threshold, Google will use brand combination searches a lot when deciding who to rank at the top. So what brand combination search is a combination of a brand name and a generic keyword, something like Shopify business name generator. And so I would love to understand to what degree they compare brand combination search demands to decide who ranks at the top. I don't think this is the only thing that they're looking at, obviously, but it seems to have a strong and strong impact. And I would just love to understand what that looks like from their perspective, because I think it's hard to judge from the outside, right? The way that we think about search volume is obviously very different than Google thinks about search volume or search demand. And I would love to get a scoop on what are the factors they look at, how well can they tell whether people prefer a certain brand, and what's the impact of Google ranking that brand over others.
Great one. Yes, I like it. So last question for you. If you inherited Google tomorrow, right? So you could turn around now and you could sit on the board and you can tell all Google engineers, like, I want to dial up the power of backlinks. I want to dial up the relevance of backlinks. I want to dial down topical authority. I want to dial up click-through rate or dwell time or how many pages are being visited or whatever it is. What would you do personally if you went in there now and you could change 1 or 2 things with the way that the algorithm works? What would you say of where Google at present are getting it wrong, and what would you try to tweak and why?
Yeah, another fantastic question, because it creates some empathy with people working at Google who don't have an easy job, a well-paid job, don't get me wrong, but not an easy job. And so I think something that I'd be curious about, and I have to be careful with how I say it, because I know that Google ran some of these experiments of like, what would happen if we decreased all the factors except for one, and how would that change the search results? And I know that some of the user behavior signals kind of came out on top when it comes to which ones would still provide the highest quality. So, but for me, I would challenge how well Google actually understands content. To me, one of the biggest moments of awareness that I had over the last couple of years, especially looking into the results or the reveals from the Google lawsuit and the ranking factors that leaked, is that Google has been putting a high emphasis on user behavior for much longer than we thought. and has only backed into understanding content better over the last couple of years. That went counter to my understanding of Google for a long time, where I thought, okay, they actually have a good understanding of content and a good understanding of backlinks. And over time, they got a better understanding of user behavior and used that to then change the search results. That's the opposite of what actually happened. And so I think that over time, the search results have probably not gotten better. In most cases, right? There's obviously exceptions. And so I wonder if Google truly understands the quality of content well, or if maybe they should just try to not understand content as much and lean even more on user behavior. The other thing I'd be really curious about is if they tone down actually the brand signals, because in all the data that I look at, I truly find that Google prioritizes brands more. I do understand why brands are the antidote to the cesspool, blah, 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 Eric Schmidt. I know. But I still don't think that Google ranks the best content at the top. I still think that there's a lot of content that is not well optimized for search, that you find a lot of newsletters, for example. I'm not tooting my own horn here, right? I'm referring to other newsletters. But I think there's a lot of hidden content that deserves to rank much, much higher, but simply, for example, doesn't hit target keywords as well. And that's something that Google should strongly figure out to improve the search results. So 2 answers. 1, tone down the brand factor, see how that changes the quality of search results, and 2, try to have Google's understanding of content actually influence the search results less.
Great answers. It's an interesting one because quite a lot of them, when they ask that question, they do try to say some of the smaller sites are feeling like they've been, like they might have some amazing experience and amazing content, but they're being held back against these bigger brands where the content's nowhere near as good, but like you said, they've got a lot of brand signals, kind of seem to have a lot of topical authority. The DR in Ahrefs is really high. Not that that really matters too much on because it's a third party tool, but like they've got a lot of power with regards to backlinks coming through, and that just seems to top trump the little kind of sites that could have more experience in a certain subject. So yeah, I'm all for it as well. Like I think they should dial down that a little bit. But it's such an interesting question because you could sit there and argue all day long and say they need to put more emphasis on power of links or relevance of links, but then people just manipulate it. But then you kind of say, okay, they need to have more emphasis on the quality of content. But again, then people then just try to, not keyword stuff, but entity stuff, and just try to game the system in every way, shape or form. So no matter what you try to dial up, it's so easy to then try to manipulate if people know the formula. And I think one of the hardest things to manipulate is good user signals. So I think I think in the Google leak they spoke about like nav boost and click data. And I think that they do probably need to put more emphasis on that because it's so difficult to game, because people try to game it with like CTR tools. But the truth of the matter is Google use a lot more than just CTR that's going in there. They'll look at like the browser history, the user history, like a click from someone that's got 10 years of user data history actually has got, it's almost like not every single click is weighted the same. Not every single link is weighted the same. If someone's not logged into Gmail and they don't know who they are, that's going to have almost no impact on CTR than someone that's got history and stuff like that that's going in there. So, but it's like you said, empathy within Google, like it's so difficult that if someone as advanced as you could go in there, you still might make the results better in areas, but then you might make it worse in areas. And then the SEO industry will jump on the bandwagon that says, Kevin Indig has made this so much worse, and show information bias of a few results that's not as good. So I think it's difficult on that front. But anyway, it's been an absolute pleasure. And so obviously with regards to the newsletter, let's kind of get this out there. Where can people subscribe to your weekly newsletter?
Yeah, thanks, James. And by the way, it's been an awesome conversation. Thanks so much for having me on. Yeah, so the newsletter is Growth Memo. You find that under growth-memo.com. And then I have a personal site, kevin-indig.com. If you're curious about, next speaking gigs or advisory, that kind of stuff.
Where's the best place if someone needs to message you or anything? Have you got any emails or like LinkedIn or anything like that?
Yeah, reach out on LinkedIn or Twitter. I use my my real name, obviously, on Twitter as well. And I regularly look at my inbox. So yeah, reach out.
Sounds good. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Kevin, and I'll see you again soon at one of the meetups, no doubt.
I hope so, James. Thanks so much.
Cheers, mate. Cheers.
Cheers.